Hi, I'm Taylor Gill, and welcome to my biogeochemical project. I am wearing sunglasses inside because I just want my hair out of my face. But let's dive right into each of the 4 cycles. I have my hand-drawn drawings, which I made on Canva. You can tell they're hand-drawn because they're not very good, but I'll just be flipping through them on my laptop. So, beginning with the carbon and oxygen cycle, I'll send the images because they're flipped, but I have them for my own reference. So beginning with the carbon and oxygen cycle, this cycle involves crucial processes such as the photosynthesis, where CO2 is captured and transformed into glucose and oxygen. Organisms engage in respiration, emitting CO2 and utilizing oxygen. Decomposition disintegrates organic matter, releasing CO2 into the atmosphere. Combustion liberates stored carbon, while excess nutrients fuel eutrophication, leading to algae blooms, which we'll get into later because that's a big part of Heinz and Schucker's issue. Carbon sinks, like forests and oceans, play a crucial role holding carbon for various periods. Carbonates within rocks aid in carbon storage, creating a dynamic cycle that influences climate, ecosystems, and life on our planet. So in our image, just to hit the main points, basically this is all the O2 in the atmosphere, and it's distributed differently. Like it's affected by industrial combustion, goes through plant respiration and animal respiration, gets sorted through fossil fuels. That's kind of the main idea. Okay, now shifting into the water cycle, it includes essential processes like evaporation, transpiration, condensation, precipitation, and runoff. Most of this, let me get back to the water cycle. Most of this is pretty common knowledge. I think most people have a general idea of the water system, but we're going to get a little bit more in depth. So these processes collectively move water into the atmosphere, form clouds, and contribute to the circulation of water through rivers and oceans. That's kind of the main idea. So the water cycle, of course, here's a collection of water, big body like a lake or something. The heat from the sun makes it evaporate into the clouds, condensation, precipitation, near the mountains high up. Little runoff stream, which leads back to our collection, and of course some transpiration underground. You get the idea. We all know the water cycle. Moving on to the phosphorus cycle. So it commences with the phosphate mining, and natural processes like erosion release phosphorus into bodies of water, potentially leading to eutrophication. Same point that we'll get into later. Eutrophication is a common theme throughout all the cycles, actually. So plants undergo the absorption of phosphorus, taking it both inorganic and organic phosphorus compounds from the soil. Excess phosphorus can be lost through leaching into waterways, contributing to nutrient pollution. Okay, so here in the phosphorus cycle, actually in all of the drawings, the little cow kind of represents the animals, like sort of like animal respiration, incorporation by animals, all that. So in the phosphorus cycle, a big point is like erosion and weathering. We can see that in these mountains up here. Ooh, little stylus thing. Okay, so a big point, which is illustrated in this drawing, we don't really have wind, but we do have sort of a rain situation going on, which weathers the rocks. Of course, the phosphate is carried by water, one of the most common ways that it's carried. This represents water. It's a bit hard to tell, just, but different layers of water. This is an underwater phosphate reserve, which can be compared to this is an underwater phosphate reserve, which can be compared to an underground phosphate reserve. Kind of similar to the carbon sinks we were talking about earlier, just like reserves in the earth. There's actually a lot going on here, but there's some decomposition going on underground, which of course breaks down minerals and phosphate decomposers under here. Plants and animals play a big role in breaking everything down, and if we go closer to over here, we can see all the little like all the the little like sediments and particles, which experience geological uplift and formation of new rocks, which this is a little bit of an example of new rock formation towards the mountains. And our final cycle, which is the nitrogen cycle. Let me pull up the image for this one. Final cycle, which we'll be getting into. Okay, so the nitrogen cycle actually illustrates the continuous journey of nitrogen through various forms. It's a little bit more abstract compared to the other cycles. It begins with nitrogen fixation, converting atmospheric nitrogen into usable compounds. Nitrification transforms compounds into ammonia, nitrates, and eventually nitrates. So nitrates basically nitrites. They sound really similar, but nitrites become nitrates through formed when certain bacteria connects nitrites to nitrates. Like the plants then absorb the nitrates from soil to use as a nutrient. That's the whole situation going on. So then yeah, it's essential for plant nutrition, which is a big part of the whole nitrogen cycle. So the plants will absorb the nitrogen compounds through assimilation, which is the process I just went over, and after death, decomposition releases nitrogen back into the soil. You know, life, death, it all recycles. That's the whole point. Denitrification completes the cycle, returning nitrogen back into the atmosphere. A little bit closer, if we get a little bit closer, we can see again absorption of the animals, represented by our cow. Here's the nitrogen in the atmosphere kind of floating about. And if we go in more in depth through the cycle, we see sort of the life cycle of the nitrogen is a pretty good way you can explain it, just to get that point across. Okay, so now let's examine the reasons why we're actually here, why the cycles contribute to the observed issues. Nitrogen can easily leach into a soil, leading to an overabundance of nutrients and water. Here's where we're getting back into the eutrophication, or what I was talking about earlier. So this fuels algae growth, actually, and causes eutrophication. See where I'm heading? Excess phosphorus from fertilization can wash into nearby waters through runoff, leading to algae blooms, which is what's going on in the lake. While the carbon cycle may not be the primary cause, changes in land and water quality can indirectly affect the cycle. Increased microbial activity from excess algae biomass in lakes can alter the carbon cycle and impact the overall ecosystem. So to address these problems, a realistic approach is crucial. This may involve creating buffer zones to filter water before it reaches lakes, promoting natural wetlands, and implementing responsible fertilizer use. I also did a little research on what some common practices that farmers do, and I may recommend the concept of cover crops and buffer strips, which is similar to the buffer zones, but it's kind of the same idea. So cover crops planted between main crop cycles act as a protective layer, preventing soil erosion and aiding in nutrient retention. Buffer strips are other option, located along the waterways, so less on the crops. The first option was cover crops planted between crop cycles. Now we're moving on to buffer strips located along waterways, like the lake. Serve as natural filters, trapping sediments and nutrients before they reach rivers and lakes, thus mitigating the impact of runoff on water bodies. So because the fertilizer situation is affecting the lake, we could either fix it from the source of where the fertilizer is being placed, like near the plants, all that good stuff. So cut it off at the source, or kind of isolate the lake, make sure all the fish are alive, all that to it could be either side. So additionally, human activities significantly impact the water cycle through deforestation and urbanization. Deforestation involves the removal of trees, impacting the water cycle's natural processes. Urbanization transforms landscapes, reducing permeability and increasing surface runoff. Now we'll get into all the cycles again, just to recap on the issues along with the cycles. In the carbon cycle, human activities such as burning fossil fuels and deforestation disrupt the natural carbon balance. Combustion releases stored carbon into the atmosphere, contributing to the atmospheric pollution. Deforestation removes trees that naturally sequester carbon, further affecting the carbon cycle. And then regarding the nitrogen cycle, human activities, including burning fossil fuels and using synthetic fertilizers, which could be what's going on right now, release nitrogen oxides into the atmosphere. These compounds eventually return to Earth's surface through rainwater and contribute to eutrophication when present in high concentrations in body of water. Now the phosphorus cycle. Human activities, particularly the use of phosphorus-based fertilizers, impact the phosphorus-based fertilizers impact the cycle. Deforestation, urbanization, which were the main points that humans are affecting, and poor land management as well, can lead to increased soil erosion, carrying phosphorus-rich particles into nearby bodies of water. So those are the three other cycles, as I touched on earlier, on ways we can actually fix the problem that hinds and shuckers are having with the water. Of course, humans have the same sort of effect on the water cycle. Some other ways, if we want to get more specific, is actually taking from our oceans, pollution in the water. That all has a very negative impact. So thank you for your time, and I hope this helps with your farming. Keep everything in mind, and that concludes my biogeochemical project. Thank you.